Commissions of Public Elections. It is Tuesday, July the 20th. Calling roll, Chair Johnson here, Council Lady Evans here, Council Lady Lee absent, Council Lady Murphy here, Vice Chair Pulley here, Rosenberg here, Rutherford here, Sepulveda here, Sledge here, Stiles here. We do have a quorum. I do have a consent agenda for all of the resolutions. If anyone wants to pull that, anyone off, let me know, but I'm just going to run through them really quickly. RS 2021-1058, Council Lady Hurt honors the life of Dr. Frederick S. Humphreys, former Tennessee State University president. RS 2021-1059, SOARA, Syracuse, and others, recognizes the retirement of Metro Nashville Public Schools teacher Lindell Edmondson. RS 2021-1060, Murphy, Driffle, and others, recognizes the 100th anniversary of St. Anne Church and School. RS 2021-1061, Van Rees, Allen, and others, celebrates and commemorates the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX. I'm assuming.
Yes.
I'm not great at Roman numerals. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments, or does anybody want to have any discussion?
I would like Council Lady Gamble to sign on to RS 2021-1060 tonight, part of the Catholic Caucus. Thank you.
And I would like for all those who are graduates of Tennessee State University or friends of Tennessee State University to sign on to the resolution for Dr. Humphreys.
Okay. Can we make that motion maybe on the floor, Hannah? Or, okay, perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? Thank you. Bills on second reading, also a consent agenda. BL 2021-800, Johnston readopts the code of the Metro government prepared by Municipal Code Corporation, including supplemental and replacement pages thereof, containing certain ordinances of general and permanent nature, enacted on or before March 22nd, 2021. All in favor? Sorry, that's. Or can someone move
Motion.
it? Motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Any not voting? Okay, there is a late item, BL 2021-799, but I don't see who the sponsor of that.
That's you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can you speak to why it's late?
So this is something that is from the legal department. It's basically correcting an address in section 1 of the bill. It was just a copy-paste error from before, and it was only brought to our attention on Monday. So if we waited until third reading, there'd be a rule suspension.
Gotcha.
And do I have another late filed amendment from the administration on public building reports?
It is not. It's
Is
not
it this?
late filed. It's timely filed, but it is on third reading, so it will require a rule
So I
suspension.
will need a
but
rule
it doesn't
suspension.
need to come through rules.
So the rule suspension I'll be asking for is because the Metro Historical did not think of this until it was too late. So I'm at the will of the committee.
Does anybody have any objection to the late filed? No. Okay, perfect. Moving on to elections and confirmations, we have two before us today. I just want to take a moment and remind everyone that the purpose of this committee is to determine if these nominees are qualified to hold this position. It's not a vote of confidence, anything like that. It's just, are they qualified to hold? We have an opportunity to ask them questions about why they would like to serve, their history, their experience. And so I just want to avoid duplicative statements that will be made on the floor tonight that we know. It's not necessary to do that here. And I will put a stop to it if I have to, but I don't think that we're going to get there. So the first one, Fair Commissioners Board appointment of Ms. Tracy Harden for a term expiring April the 6th, 2025. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Doing very well.
So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to explain why you would like to serve on this board and tell us, some experiences that would lend you to serving on this board, and then I'll open it up for questions.
Okay. I'm a Tennessee native. I grew up in Knoxville. I'm a graduate of Fisk University. My husband's a graduate of TSU. We moved away from Nashville in 1990 and came back here in 2000. We came back to Nashville he was a project manager on the building of the Mount Zion Church. And I worked with nonprofits in the city. So the time that I was here, I worked with Nashville Read until we decided 20 years ago in 2001 that we were going to start a construction business. I have been COO and CFO of Don Harden Group for 20 years. I am not the face of the business, so I'm the one that works in the background. But in the meantime, I've worked with different community organizations in the city, a couple of different clubs, like for example, the Links Incorporated. I've been the president of them. I've been on the board of Make-A-Wish. I am currently on the board of BBB of MiddleTennessee.org. And I always come into my board positions with the idea that all of the boards that I am on need to be representative of what Nashville looks like. And I'm very vocal in that, and I'm very committed to that. I'm very committed to that. And when I look at the world and the world that we're in today in terms of diversity, there are all kinds of diversity. And everyone has to come to the table, and everyone has to support everyone in their ability to come to the table. I am interested in the Fair Board. I'm coming from not my position as COO of Don Harden Group, but my background of public administration and of how you run programs, and of how everyone, and I look at the Fair Boards in terms of everyone has a seat at a table. You've got to have people in there that may not be a member of that community, but know that they represent that community. And I think that's what I bring in this situation that may be different from others. It's not in my backyard, but I have enough of sympathy for people and how that things work that I consider everyone's stand. I know everyone that's interested in soccer has a stand. Everyone that's interested in racing has a stand. The community has a stand. The people that go to the market, they have a stand. And what the responsibility of that board is to take everyone's views into consideration and come to a consensus that you always take into consideration that everyone's not going to get everything that they want, but everyone's going to be fairly treated at the table. So that's what I bring to the board. I know that this has been contentious, and I've had a lot of, my friends have been sending me all the emails. So anyone that sends an email out about it, or anyone who posts about it. And the one that struck me today that I saw in a post was something that came out, I guess it was in the Tennessean, about what you were looking for in this board. And the two things that came was, one, an understanding of soccer, and the second was an understanding of workforce. We have been doing workforce diversity for 15 years. We did the workforce diversity for the Music City Center. In addition to that, we managed the building at Meharry, and on that project, we had over 40% minority participation. So in terms of workforce, I understand workforce. In terms of soccer, my son started playing soccer at the age of 3. He still plays in 4 walk-up leagues, 4 days a week at that. We get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and watch soccer. I am addicted to English Premier League. I have gone to England to watch English Premier League. I understand the importance of soccer. And so in terms of what you're looking for the board, I don't think you could find a more qualified candidate at this point. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you being willing to serve. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Harden? No? All right, let's take a vote, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against?
No.
No.
4?
I'm
All right.
abstaining.
And 1 not vote. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. All right, next up, Human Relations Commission appointment of Mr. George. Now, I don't want to mess this up. Is it Salas?
Jorge Salles Diaz.
Jorge, Mr. Diaz. That's what I'm going to say. For a term starting April 18th, 2024. Again, a couple of minutes about why you would like to serve on this particular commission.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jorge. I was born and raised in Guatemala. Came to the United States when I was 15 years old. I am queer. I am an immigrant. I am Latino. And I was asked to serve in this commission by Pratik Dash, one of the commissioners, and by Mel Fowler Green. There are 2 reasons why I think, and I'm a graduate of Vanderbilt University. That's how I came here to Nashville. love the city, love this city, love its people, and that's why I stayed. And the two reasons why I think I was asked to serve in this board, if you will allow me, is number one, because of the intersection of my identities, and because that makes me aware of problems that other people can't see. So, for example, when a meeting is in English, and I have 20, 30 community members are trying to watch it and they don't understand what's going on, I can serve as a bridge between that community and government. When someone is being discriminated against because they are gay, but they're in a majority Latino community, I understand that experience in a way that very few people understand it. And I think the purpose of this commission being to deal with matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I am well equipped with my lived experience to talk about those issues. The second reason why I think I was asked to serve in the commission is because I have been a public servant for 3 years. I was the housing paralegal at the Legal Aid Society when COVID hit, and as such, I have this very niche understanding of housing law and how government has responded to that crisis from both a legal standpoint, a policy standpoint, as well as a social work standpoint. I've navigated all of the agencies in this city that help people with housing. I also dealt with employment issues, including people who had to file unemployment during COVID, and our phones were ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And so I understand those systems pretty well. And I'll give you an example of why I'm going to be useful in this commission if you allow me to serve. Today, Mel Fowler Green called me in the morning. Hey, Pat, who we're giving money to, the executive director has a question about housing law that I don't know the answer to. Can you help us figure it out? Well, I know URALTA, the Uniform Landlord Residential Act of Tennessee, inside and out. So I knew the statute that we needed for this question. I go court watching at least once every other week. So I know the judges. I know how they treat people. I know accessibility matters in the court. I know accessibility matters in terms of the agencies that are supporting people who are houseless or who are in transitional housing, which, by the way, congratulations, Councilmember Sledge, for that accomplishment today with the affordable housing in your district. So I know these things really well, and I have a very unique lived experience that I think allows me to be a bridge for many different communities.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you for being willing to, oh, do you have a question?
I did.
Okay.
I have one question. So, in talking about diversity and equity and being able to stand up for individuals, sometimes it can get a bit contentious. How do you best address that when you're frustrated with a situation that can come up?
Well, I think this might be referring to the incident where in a public comment I told council, I hate you all, in Spanish. And I'll own that. I said that, yeah, that's me, like I'm not trying to hide my face. I get very passionate because I am zealous about my community, and I will defend them, I will represent them loudly, and I lost my temper in that occasion. I will, on the record, retract that statement, but if you take something away from that, I want you to take away that I am zealous for my community. That comment came from a place of love, because I did in fact have 30 community members who were trying to watch the hearing and who were texting me to ask me things. It came from a place of love, and I think moving forward, one of the reasons why I decided to accept this invitation to try out for this process was because I recognized there are more productive ways to go about advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry. I just want to recognize
Yes,
committee
please do.
members first.
Yes, thank you, Jorge, for being here today. For y'all who don't know Jorge, he's been a very loud advocate for the Hispanic and immigrant community and for construction workers. Jorge also helped when we did the Tenants' Right Forum, and he helped, translate for that and facilitated that with legal aid. And so I think Jorge is very much qualified to be on this board.
Yes, I'm just here as chair of the LGBTQ caucus to offer our support for this candidate.
Thank you very much. Anything else for this nominee? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Right.
Any against? Any not voting? All right, thank you so much. We are not quite adjourned. In the back of your packet after the elections, if everyone, we're gonna do some committee structure stuff, which is gonna be super boring. So if you wanna leave, or if you wanna stay, you're welcome to stay, but if you wanna go ahead and leave, you're welcome to do that as well.
Stick around.
And thank you both so much for being willing to serve and share your talents
What did
with
you
us.
say?
Do you have another copy of that?
If you had one, it was on consent. I put it on, yeah. Yep, you're welcome.
Do you have another copy of what was sent out? Because it wasn't in the original, it was in another one.
Oh, of the thing, no. What do I have? Oh, I do, I'm sorry.
That's why it's helpful to have a helper.
It is helpful to have a helper. Okay, does anybody else, I thought we have everybody here. Do you need a committee thingy?
I got the email. Ask you a
Okay,
question.
sure.
It's really big later.
Well, I cut some trees down to, may as well use it.
Alright.
Okay, so, in my email that I sent to you guys, again, this is not anything that I am married to, it's just a starting point. I think we can all agree we've got not the most efficient process, and, there are two members that actually gave me some really good, starting points. Councilman Sledge is one, Council Lady Murphy. Several committee members, I asked Elizabeth Waits and I asked John Cooper. And so this was sort of a compilation of all those things, again, just a starting point. So I wanted to go through them with you guys to get your feedback. Hopefully you had a few minutes to look over it, and I know that several people are invested in this process. Yes.
I think it's important to say that you also pulled how many bills went to certain committees.
Yes.
Because when you were looking at this, that was something, because I had brought up, there were some things that she had put together, and I was like, I don't see them together. She was like, it's because of how few they were. So there's some data behind this, and not just throwing, Colby and I didn't just sit around and throw darts at a wall or pull names out of a hat.
Yeah, there's a method to the madness, but again, there's multiple ways to do it, obviously. I mean, it really is just kind of what we think works best. But the purpose of it is to not have so many quorum issues, not have so many pieces of legislation in duplicative committees when it's just really not necessary. So right now we have 13. So this gets us down to 8, which is helpful. So I'll just open it up. I don't want to get into calling on people and all that. I think we can all be respectful of each other. So does anybody want to start with any comments or problems? Does anything jump out at them that makes what? I feel you boring into my head.
Not a lot.
Okay,
No.
go ahead.
So, I mean, I think I don't have strong feelings about the specific, the way things are broken up. I think really it takes us to 11 committees, since there are 3 subcommittees, so there's still gonna be 11 committees to get scheduled. And I don't know if since we're sending the same number of bills, which is ultimately the issue, I don't know if I think when you're trying to put together a puzzle that isn't gonna fit, it's easier to do it with, it might be easier to do it with more pieces, or it might be easier to do it with fewer pieces, because trying to move meetings around when you have larger committees means more conflicts. So I'm deferring to what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
But I think that our problem
And I
lays
don't-
outside the committee structure.
I get what you're saying, totally. And so to that, I would say, because you're right, all these subcommittees, they don't necessarily have to be subcommittees. It could just be, if you're on planning or whatever we're gonna call it, and there's an affordable housing bill, the whole committee is gonna take up that bill. Those don't happen super often anyway. Parks, greenways, and open space doesn't happen all that often. Economic tourism, development and tourism convention, I'm on that committee, does not happen all that often. So it's not like it's gonna really cause a ton. It may add another one bill every once in a blue moon.
Dave, one of my thoughts with the subcommittees, because I think that may have spurred some of it, was, for example, budget deals with a lot of different things, right? But then when we have some issues that are economic development stuff that need to be fleshed out a little bit further, that it might, like, if we have a big, you know, like, when the Opryland, corporate welfare was going through the council last term, it may have been helpful to have that subcommittee meet on that, and then it keeps, you know, get the work done in that committee instead of taking it forward. So rather than thinking of it as these are gonna meet all the time, more so if something needs a little bit deeper dive into, that's something that might be scheduled the week before, you know, the Tuesday before, or whatever, you know, it just gives
Like a
a little bit
special
more
call,
flex. I
sort
don't
of.
wanna say special called, because I think that we've gone way too far this term with special called, but I wanted to, there are some committees that I think sometimes need a little deeper dive. They may not have a lot of bills that go through there, but like Parks and Rec, when we are talking about large acquisitions, then maybe they need that deeper dive. When we're talking about, you know, what else do we have as a subcommittee? I think those are the only two. No, affordable housing. I know that last term that was a big issue that we wanted, a lot of people wanted its own. But there are bills that I've noticed go through affordable housing that really, they only go through affordable housing and not planning, and they should be going through planning. And so I was trying to, my thought process was somewhat of be respectful to the topics that people wanted to have a deeper dive, but also create a forum where if there's a big economic development thing that needs to be focused on, that we kind of have that subgroup that of people who really specialize in that, and then the whole committee doesn't have to be there for something that maybe they are not as specialized in.
Got it, okay.
I was gonna ask, for affordable housing, when we first started the term, it was very important to a lot of council members that was its own separate thing finally. And
It was finally last year too.
yeah, and so I feel like we in affordable housing have specific people that come and talk to us on a regular basis, and we have just started to make ground on trying to push specific legislation that's gonna help people. And so I'm just worried that for that specific committee, it might cause a couple of problems. I understand wanting them to come before planning as well.
Because there's some
I
bills
think
that should
that's
be,
important.
yeah.
But I'm just worried that it might set us back on some of the progress we've made.
To that point, that was another reason why I sort of liked the subcommittees being pulled out, because it's still made it special, because it is a special topic, so it's not just blending it back in. It's under a big heading, which makes sense, planning, zoning, whatever we're calling it, and then having a special subcommittee for people that are very interested in that, and then it reduces the duplication, but again, still, you know, gives it the special attention that it deserves. So it's that.
And gives y'all time to still have those speakers, and come up with kind of legislative ideas and agendas and a space to discuss it that maybe we don't have the time for in the full planning committee. And so I think it still functions the same, but instead of having bills not go through both committees that need to, I think it almost gives it more importance, because we're gonna be talking about affordable housing twice rather than only in affordable housing, when the planning committee should be discussing it too. Every land use change that we make impacts affordability, gentrification, and that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel over my last 2 years as chair of the committee, we have missed out as a planning committee by not having that input. And so I think this still affords, not meant to be a play on words, it still allows for that discussion and that kind of legislative thought process to happen, but then also come through and get some more vetting and more input from other council members before hitting the floor. So we're all educated on it, instead of it just being talked about there and then we run through on the floor.
And we still have time to because I've been contemplating this, so we're not rushing to make decisions, so we still have time to kind of process this and see if we see some other room for it.
Yeah, the only thing that I will say is that when I talked to Vice Mayor and said, look, are you even willing to do this midterm? Because it does make sense. We've got the traffic and parking commission person that's going to be rolling over. Planning is going to be rolling over. So it's a good time to do it if we're going to do it. And what did he say? September is when he typically makes those decisions. So yes, we've got the rest of this month, and I'm happy to call as many special committee meetings, or we can talk offline. It's not legislation, so feel free to call me and give whatever.
No.
Never mind.
Discuss it in an open meeting. Yes.
Never mind. We will call 400 special meetings. No.
Sorry.
Whatever. So, yeah. Well,
Everybody
yes.
call Hannah.
Inundate Hannah.
I'll
Hannah's
compile
got all the
everything.
time.
Yeah, but we do have some time to suss it out. What I would say is, the faster that this group can come to a consensus, I think I would like for us to be on the same page and then bring it to the body. Obviously, this is gonna get out, which it's not like it's a secret, but I just would like for all of us to be on the same page, since this is rules, to have reasoning behind why we're doing it, so that when it does go to the rest of the 30, adding 30 more people into the mix, that we can say, well, you're right, council lady, whoever, but this is why we chose to do this type thing. So,
Okay.
yes. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Does it matter, or is it problematic in any way if a metro department has, say, interest in multiple committees? And I point to personnel. Of course, I'm now chair of personnel, but for HR, Metro HR, so personnel is under government operations, but also under Metro HR is the Veteran Service Office. And then, but veterans is under Children and Human Services, so that would
They
divide.
currently do.
HR.
All the departments currently are
They
divided
do?
up amongst us now.
Okay, so that's not an issue or a problem in any way to divide or share the issues, if
I
you will.
wouldn't think
or
so. I
split
would
it
think
up.
that there would be multiple instances where there's certain departments that care what's going on and all kind of different things. But I mean, that's a good.
I'm not saying it's a
good
problem,
question.
I'm raising it as
Yeah.
a question
I
of
mean,
whether or not
HR
that's
goes
an issue.
before budget all the time. I was chair of personnel in my first 2 years, and we go before that all the time. In planning, we have water in there, we have public works in there, we've had codes in there, we've had historic in there. When budget, I'm sure I haven't sat on there since math is not always my forte, but everything seems to go through. I mean, that's not uncommon.
Okay.
Oh, it was you.
Yeah, I just want to raise one issue that struck me when I saw this, and that's some of the name changes, because, I don't want to be accused of being a government, part of a government that further complicates things rather than tries to make it simpler. And I looked at some of the name changes, and I'm just wondering why. And I wonder if the public, we would not be in some ways confusing them. For example, Finance, Ways and Means, I know that that's the name of a state committee that deals with budget matters. If you look at the U.S. House Ways and Means Committee, they deal with raising revenue and taxation. And Ways and Means itself means just methodology for solving problems. And I don't, I'd rather keep things simple for the public. And I think budget and finance probably describes what we do as a city better. Health, hospitals, and social services, I know means an awful lot to certain communities around, and I just don't want us to embark on a process where we may be further confusing public members who look at our committees and want to understand what it is that we're doing and want to direct themselves to the right places. So, I mean, I'm not like real shot. I'm not going to run around with a protest sign or anything. I don't want to raise that issue because I know it's of issue to some.
Just one logistical thing. I think that if we have 8, hopefully this wouldn't be the plan, but if we had 40 council members on 3 committees each, like now, that's 120, which is an average of 15 people per committee, and we can't seat more than 9 or 10 at these tables. So anything that's not going to be in the chamber, we need to make sure that the committee sizes are going to be held down, and that people will only be on 1 or 2 committees.
Yeah.
To make that work.
Dave, to that point, I think that's important. when I became chair of planning this term, I asked to come off of, I hated coming off of Parks and Rec because I really felt strongly about that. And I have so many of those things in my district, but I found that I just didn't have, and it could be because I'm the planning commission, I'm on the commission too. But I've found it really, I've been able to focus more on what's going on in the committees that I'm on when I'm on less committees. And I think what Kevin Roden, was it this term or last term, that he got kind of forgotten on to get extra committees or whatever. So he might be somebody to talk to too, to see if it's more helpful if we're on 2 committees instead of feeling like we are running around with our heads cut off to get to committees.
I would say when I was on 0 committees, I found I had
that's
plenty of time.
Yes, I forgot about that too.
You're on 0 committee.
Well, yeah, and I think, thankfully, we're not the ones that do that. Like, so vice mayor has to figure out where that is. And so I would think that just the way that it is now, the biggest ones are gonna be budget and finance, or finance, ways and means, whatever we call it, and then the land use and housing or planning, whatever we wanna call it. Those are the 2 biggest that probably handle the most and or take the longest. And so if you're on one of those, maybe you're only on 2. And then if you're not on either one of those, you can be on 3 of the others type thing. But that's vice mayor's deal. I don't wanna get into, but you're right. You're right. Yeah.
The only thing I was gonna say, because I like the direction, is education doesn't have, of course, really very little legislation to consider, but what Delicia had started and then Tom had continued was kind of more of that peer-to-peer with the MNPS board. And so I think if there's an opportunity for it to be a sub, I think that would be a positive, because whomever moves forward in that position or kind of in that role, that there's been some good momentum, I think, this year related to the budget, and it
Yes.
having half of Metro's budget, or almost half, or whatever the percentage is, that would be good.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I think that would just be sort of trying to, figure out how we wanna do that. In my opinion, the education committee is the school board. I like that we're sort of getting more involved, but in a way, it's almost like, well, there's lanes.
Sure.
They just don't take up that much legislation, so I felt like it was a little bit,
We've also been, like, in the middle of a pandemic. I think that a lot of the education committee members have wanted to do more along with the school board and try and get a couple of things accomplished, but, we haven't been able to do that. And now that we're coming out of the pandemic, I think there's an appetite to be able to do more.
Because I would say if it's not part of Children and Human Services, if there was, even if it was connected under finance, just because of their budget being so large in that educational component, I think this time that we had made the budget process probably easier, at least for the folks on education, to understand kind of what their ask was and how to advocate, for some of the things they were looking at.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that.
yeah, I knew that was gonna be a question with the education, because I know we were trying to, there were some people that were really interested in that and wanting to get more involved. And so I think it's just that how we really just sort of suss it out and figure out what's the best way for us to do it and still be efficient and
Yeah.
effective, right? But there's definitely, I think, a means to an end. Does anybody else have anything? I still feel you.
I think that we did get an email. We had an email this week clarifying that animal removal is not under TDOT or NDOT, and so maybe we need to list animal removal wherever it's.
Goodness gracious.
I move to adjourn.
Seconded. All right, thanks, y'all.
Did no one else see that email clarification?
No idea what you're talking about.
I did.
I
Thank
did.
you. I thought it was hilarious.